right now, somewhere in the mountains and coastal towns of northern Sinaloa, Mexico, a man is living like a king. And the FBI, the DEA, the US Department of Justice, and the entire Mexican federal government cannot find him. The US government has slapped a $5 million bounty on his head. He has been arrested 4 separate times, charged with organized crime, drug trafficking, and kidnapping, and every single time, he walked right back out the door a free man. He has been at large for over 2 decades, outlasting bosses, cartels, wars, and the fall of the most famous drug lord who ever lived. And in 2026, while his rivals are dead, captured or rotting in American supermax prisons, this man is running the most powerful drug operation in all of Mexico. His name is Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores, but the world knows him as El Chapo Isidro. Now here's what makes this story genuinely different from every other cartel boss you've ever heard about. This man is not flashing private jets on social media. He is not posting photos of tigers and gold-plated pistols. He is not throwing his kids a $1 million birthday party in front of news cameras, because El Chapo Isidro understood something that virtually every other drug lord in history failed to grasp. The second you start living loud is the second they start closing in. And that one philosophy, that one fundamental decision to stay in the shadows is what has kept him free while everyone around him fell. His billionaire lifestyle is not what you think it looks like. And I assure you the real story lies in the details the media conveniently avoids talking about. Because the way this man spends his money, moves his power, and protects his empire is unlike anything we have ever seen from a cartel boss at this level. But amidst the cartel wars raging across Mexico, amidst the FBI putting him on their most wanted list, amidst an entire government apparatus trying to bring him down, El Chapo Isidro accomplished something that should be impossible with just one move. One decision made decades ago that changed everything forever. And by the time this video is done, you are going to understand exactly how he did it and why in 2026, he may be the single most powerful and dangerous drug lord alive. Let's get into it. But before we get into the lifestyle, the money, the power, and the empire this man runs in 2026, I need you to first understand who Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores actually is, because the media gets this completely wrong. They introduce him like he was always some big cartel boss. Nah, the reality is far more interesting than that. June 19th, 1982. A kid is born in Navojoa in the neighboring state of Sonora, Mexico. Nobody knows much about his early years. What we do know from a profile compiled by CENAP, that's Mexico's own intelligence analysis center, is that at some point this young man crossed the border from Sonora into the coastal corridors of northern Sinaloa. And when he got there, he did not start by running drugs. He started by dismantling ships. Let that sink in for a second. According to a Sinaloa security force agent who was consulted during the investigation, his strength was scrap metal. He dismantled ships in Guasave at Las Glorias Beach in El Colorado and sold the scrap. He was involved in drug trafficking, but he wasn't very important. That is a direct account from someone inside Mexican law enforcement talking about the man who is today at the top of the FBI's 10 most wanted list. A man who now reportedly exports more drugs into the United States than anyone else was. At first, just some guy selling scrap metal on the Sinaloa coast. But here's where things get interesting. Sometime in the late 1990s, this young man from Navojoa began working for one of the most feared and mythologized figures in the history of Mexican organized crime, Amado Carrillo Fuentes, known as El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. Carrillo Fuentes ran the Juarez cartel and was one of the most sophisticated drug traffickers the world had ever seen. A man who moved cocaine by the plan load and used civilian aviation to build a narco empire spanning the entire continent. Working under El Señor de los Cielos was not just a job, it was a graduate school in criminal strategy, logistics, and survival. And young Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores was paying close attention. Then in 1997, everything changed. Amado Carrillo Fuentes died on the operating table following a botched plastic surgery procedure. He was literally trying to change his appearance to disappear from authorities. The Juarez cartel fractured, lieutenants scattered, and Mesa Flores, still in his teens and early 20s, made a critical decision. He aligned himself with the Beltran-Leyva brothers. Now, while all this was happening, the Beltran-Leyva organization was still technically allied with the Sinaloa cartel. meaning it was allied with a rising power player named Joaquin Guzman Loera. Yes, the original El Chapo. At this point in time, Fausto Isidro Meza Flores and El Chapo Guzman were technically on the same side. Nobody, absolutely nobody, could have predicted what was about to happen between these two worlds. Through the early 2000s, Meza Flores built himself up quietly inside the Beltran Leyva structure. He became what law enforcement would later describe as a primary enforcer and hitman for the Beltran Leyva brothers. A man who was trusted enough to lead their armed operations and ruthless enough to carry them out. By the time the next decade began, he had control of a faction of fighters in the Sinaloa coastal corridor known as Los Mazalecos. He was still not famous. He was still not on the radar of American federal agencies. He was just a very capable, very dangerous, and very quiet operator building something in the shadows. And then January 21st, 2008 happened, and it changed everything. On that date, Mexican federal police arrested Alfredo Beltran Leyva, one of the top brothers in the Beltran Leyva organization. The arrest was clean, precise, and clearly based on intelligence. And the Beltran Leyvas immediately pointed the finger at one man, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. They believed Guzman had given up Alfredo to the authorities to eliminate a rival and consolidate power. Whether that accusation was accurate or a miscalculation, it did not matter. The result was war. The alliance between the Sinaloa cartel and the Beltran Leyva organization collapsed instantly, and Fausto Isidro Meza Flores, at just 25 years old, found himself on the front lines of one of the bloodiest cartel conflicts Mexico had ever seen. But did that shake him? Nah, instead it made him. Now listen closely, because what I'm going to say next brings everything together. In May of 2008, just 4 months after Alfredo Beltran Leyva was arrested, a convoy of gunmen ambushed a vehicle outside a shopping center in Culiacan, Sinaloa. Over 200 bullets were fired. When the smoke cleared, Edgar Guzman Lopez, the 22-year-old son of El Chapo Guzman, was dead, along with at least 4 bodyguards and 2 bystanders. It was one of the most brazen acts of cartel warfare in years. And Meza Flores, as a key operational commander for the Beltran Leyvas, was right in the middle of it. That hit ignited a firestorm. The Sinaloa cartel responded with the full weight of its resources. They sent gunmen into the Beltran Leyva strongholds. They bought off municipal police chiefs in contested territories, turning law enforcement against the Beltran Leyvas. They assaulted the coastal city of Los Mochis, which had been a Beltran Leyva base. In one confrontation, El Chapo's forces reportedly forced Meza Flores' fighters to retreat and recapture turf. And in the violence, Guzman himself was said to have been wounded. But here's the part that might actually interest you. Even while losing ground in some areas, Chapo Isidro's people held what mattered most. They never lost Guasave, they never lost Sinaloa de Leyva. Those were his heartlands, the territories where his community roots and his local power made him nearly impossible to dislodge. You see, there's a difference between a cartel boss and a man who has embedded himself into the fabric of a community. One can be pushed out by firepower. The other requires a total uprooting, which is a much harder thing to accomplish. April 28, 2010. This date almost ended the entire story before it got started. Mexican law enforcement launched an operation in the mountains of Choy, Sinaloa, deep in the rugged Sierra where Meza Flores operated. They nearly had him. What followed was a brutal firefight. 2 Mexican soldiers were killed and 12 of Chapo Isidro's gunmen were killed, including his right-hand man, a man known as Omar Alfonso Rubio, alias El Chante. But Meza Flores himself slipped away into the mountains. Think about what it takes to escape a military operation that kills your top lieutenant and 12 of your men in the mountains of Sinaloa and still walk away free. That is not luck. That is an infrastructure of safe houses, loyal lookouts, community cooperation, and an intimate knowledge of terrain that takes years to build. El Chapo Isidro had already been building that infrastructure quietly for a decade. By 2011, reports of Chapo Isidro's activities were becoming more frequent and more alarming in the press. In November of that year, Mexican authorities linked him to 32 corrupt police officers in a home, Sinaloa, not arresting them, not fighting them, but having them on his payroll, integrated into his protection network. In that same month, 16 burned bodies were found in trucks in Culiacan, and authorities connected that massacre to Meza Flores' organization as well. He was no longer the scrap metal kid from Navajoa, he was now one of the most feared operators in all of northern Mexico. December 12, 2013, one of Mesa Flores' top lieutenants, a man known as Nacho Gonzalez, was arrested in Guasave, but not Mesa Flores himself. In that same year, the U.S. Treasury Department formally designated him as the leader of his own criminal organization, the Mesa Flores Organization, and cited the rivalry between him and El Chapo Guzman as the main cause of a fourfold increase in organized crime murders in Sinaloa. A fourfold increase, think about how much violence you have to generate to multiply the murder rate of one of Mexico's most dangerous states by 4 times. And then, in 2014, something happened that again changed the landscape. Hector Beltran-Leyva, the last surviving brother, the one who had been hiding in Nayarit and quietly rebuilding the BLO, was arrested by Mexican authorities. The Beltran-Leyva organization had effectively lost all of its top leadership. Every single Beltran-Leyva brother was either dead or in a cell. And Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores, he was still free. He was still in Guasave, and now, with the brothers gone, he was the one holding the remnants of their organization together. You see, here's something no one actually talks about. And this is the part of the story that reveals everything about how this man operates and why his money works differently than other cartel bosses. From 2011 to 2020, Mexican authorities arrested Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores at least 4 times. 4 separate arrests, each one on serious charges, organized crime, drug trafficking, kidnapping, weapons possession. These were not traffic stops. These were not minor incidents. These were arrests that for any normal person would mean decades in prison without the possibility of bail. And every single time, he walked out. According to investigative reporting using leaked documents from the Guacamaya hacktivist group, the largest information leak in the history of Mexico's National Defense Secretariat, Mesa Flores was released by agencies including the Sinaloa Attorney General's office under the administration of Marco Antonio Higuera Gomez, who served as Attorney General from 2011 to 2016, as well as by federal prosecutors. His arrests were not minor, but for reasons that investigators themselves describe as unclear, none of them resulted in imprisonment. Then, in August of 2017, his lawyers filed a legal maneuver that is almost hard to believe when you hear it. They filed an amparo, a Mexican injunction, essentially a constitutional protection against an arrest warrant for organized crime. And on December 1st of that year, a federal district judge in Los Mochis granted it. A sitting federal judge in Mexico gave Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores a legal shield against arrest. Let me put that in context for you. This is a man who the U.S. DEA had already identified as one of the most dangerous drug traffickers in Mexico. The U.S. Treasury had already designated him. The Department of Justice had already indicted him. And a Mexican federal judge granted him an injunction that temporarily protected him from being arrested. If you do the math, I'm sure you can tell that the way this man has stayed free is not simply about running fast or hiding well. It is about having enough money, enough influence, and enough leverage within the system itself to make the system work for him rather than against him. That is a level of financial and political power that most cartel bosses never achieve, because most cartel bosses are too busy being loud to build those kinds of relationships quietly. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because this is the part of the story that answers the question you actually came here for. What does the billionaire lifestyle of El Chapo Isidro actually look like in 2026? And why is it nothing like what you'd expect? But understand that we need to first talk about the money before we talk about how he spends it, because the scale of what this man is generating is genuinely staggering. According to security sources cited by investigative journalists at El País, one of the most authoritative publications covering Mexican organized crime, Mesa Flores runs what is described as the largest drug export operation in northern Mexico. A source with direct knowledge of his operations said bluntly, he exports more drugs than everyone else, not more than some, more than everyone. His organization, the Guasave Cartel, formerly known to U.S. authorities as the Mesa Flores Transnational Criminal Organization, controls drug production, transportation, and distribution across multiple Mexican states. The U.S. Department of State has documented that his operation has predominantly controlled drug production, transportation, and distribution in several locations throughout Mexico. His reach runs through the municipalities of Guasave and Ojom in Sinaloa, with connections across Sonora, Baja California, and Baja California Sur. Mexican military intelligence identified his criminal activity as both terrestrial and maritime, with operations documented across Sinaloa, Durango, Chihuahua, and both Baja California states. And what is he producing and moving? Methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and increasingly fentanyl. In December of 2024, Mexican authorities linked the Mesa organization to a record seizure of 20 million counterfeit fentanyl pills in northern Sinaloa. That single seizure, which is only what was caught, was described as the largest fentanyl bust in Mexico's recent history. Raids in Guasave uncovered industrial-scale fentanyl production equipment, mixers, and over a ton of the drugs stored across multiple properties. This is not a small operation. This is a pharmaceutical-grade narco-industrial complex operating in the heart of Sinaloa. There are also credible reports suggesting his operation has reached markets in Asia and Oceania, not just the United States. The Mesa organization is not a regional cartel, it is a transnational criminal enterprise. Now here's where it gets different from every other cartel boss story you've ever heard. Why did El Chapo Isidro choose to live the way he lives? Well, it all boils down to one lesson that every drug lord before him failed to learn, and that he watched them fail to learn in real time. Think about every famous cartel boss you know. Pablo Escobar built his own zoo. Arturo Beltran Leyva threw parties that made the front pages of newspapers. El Chapo Guzman had a private zoo with lions, panthers, tigers, and a miniature train you could ride through it. He had a $10 million beach house in Acapulco. He had ranches in every single Mexican state. He had 4 private jets. He traveled to Macau to gamble and to Switzerland for cellular anti-aging treatments. His associates posted photos of gold-plated rifles and luxury supercars on Instagram. And where are all of them now? Dead. In American supermax prisons, living in witness protection after cooperating with the feds. Fausto Isidro Meza Flores watched all of that unfold and made a different decision. He built something invisible. And that invisibility, that is the lifestyle, that is the luxury. That is the biggest purchase he has ever made. According to every intelligence assessment and investigative report on this man, he maintains a deliberately low profile that is exceptional even by the standards of Mexican organized crime. Unlike the Chapitos, who have been photographed in luxury compounds, unlike other narco bosses who maintain social media presences through their associates, unlike the generation of bosses who wore their wealth on their bodies and their properties, Meza Flores does not appear in photos. He does not have a known fleet of luxury vehicles attached to his name. He is described by one intelligence analyst as less media savvy than his predecessor, but just as capable of exporting drugs north. That is intentional, calculated, strategic, and it is the single most expensive thing he has ever invested in, his own anonymity. But does that mean he lives poorly? Nah, not even close. Let's break down how El Chapo Isidro actually spends his fortune, because the categories of his spending reveal a man who thinks in decades, not months. The first category, and the most documented, is community investment. And I want you to understand what this means in the context of a man who needs a whole region to love him enough to never give him up to the authorities. Every year around Christmas, in the municipalities of Guasave, Juan Jose Rios, and Omho, the heartland of his operation, the Guasave cartel organizes what are known locally as narco posadas. These are large-scale holiday celebrations organized in the town plazas and public spaces, funded entirely by Meza Flores' organization. Attendees who spoke to journalists described the events in detail. They said the cartel used to just walk through the streets handing out food pantries and toys, but it evolved. It got organized. By the time reporters were documenting it in 2024, the events were elaborate productions with raffles, and the prizes were not small. Motorcycles, refrigerators, flat screen televisions, appliances, all distributed by raffle ticket to local residents in the main esplanades of multiple towns. All funded by El Chapo Isidro, and throughout all of it, narco corridos, songs literally written about the Guasave cartel and its leader, played as the soundtrack. Now think about what that costs, and then think about what it buys. It buys a thing that no amount of military firepower can substitute for: community loyalty. When federal forces roll into Guasave looking for Fausto Isidro Meza Flores, they are rolling into a municipality where he is the one who paid for the Christmas party, where his organization is the one that replaced what the government never provided. where the local residents have a vested personal material reason to not answer the knock on the door of a federal agent. That is worth infinitely more than a safe house with a secret tunnel. It is a human firewall that money built. The second major category of spending is operational protection, which is a polite way of describing what we can reasonably call one of the most sophisticated bribery networks in Mexico. From 2011 to 2016 alone, prosecutors and investigative reporters documented that Mesa Flores was released from 4 separate serious arrests by agencies that include the Sinaloa State Attorney General's Office and federal prosecutors. Intelligence documents leaked through the Guacamaya hacktivists confirmed that for reasons that remain unclear, these serious charges, organized crime, kidnapping, drug trafficking, did not result in prison time. In 2017, his lawyers, plural, a team of lawyers, successfully filed a federal amparo that a district judge granted, creating a legal shield against his arrest warrant. You do not get a federal judge to grant an amparo for the leader of a major drug trafficking organization without significant financial resources and legal infrastructure behind that effort. According to analysts, this legal protection system is one of the most underreported aspects of how he has stayed free. The third category of spending is military power, and this is where El Chapo Isidro is not humble at all. The Mesa Flores transnational criminal organization is described by the U.S. Department of State as a heavily armed and violent group. His forces have engaged in gun battles against rival cartels and against Mexican law enforcement. In April of 2010, when Mexican forces tried to capture him in the mountains of Choice, the firefight left 2 Mexican soldiers dead and 12 of his gunmen killed. His organization went toe-to-toe with the Sinaloa cartel during the wars of the early 2010 and held territory that even El Chapo Guzman could not take from him. By 2025, his forces had access to drone technology. Reports confirmed that an attack on a ranch linked to a rival faction, specifically targeting a property connected to a Sinaloa cartel adversary known as El Guano, was carried out using drones and attributed to Mesa Flores' organization and its allies. This is a man who was spending significant money on the kind of military technology that governments use. Armed drones deployed in Sinaloa. That is not a street gang, that is a militia. The fourth category is logistics and production infrastructure. The industrial-scale fentanyl labs discovered in Guasave give us a window into this spending. Authorities uncovered not just pills, 20 million counterfeit fentanyl pills in a single seizure, but the industrial equipment to make them, mixers, processing facilities, multiple properties converted into drug manufacturing sites. These are not improvised setups. These are operations that require significant capital investment, technical expertise, chemical precursor supply chains, and distribution networks that stretch across 2 countries. According to intelligence documents, Mesa Flores' organization controls not just drug transportation routes, but drug manufacturing laboratories and field locations. He is not just a trafficker who moves product from point A to point B. He is a producer who controls the supply chain from raw material to finished product. And the fifth category is the one that is perhaps the hardest to quantify but the most important: alliances. Because in 2025 and 2026, El Chapo Isidro did something that none of his predecessors managed to pull off. Here's something no one actually talks about, because when the media covers the cartel wars in Mexico right now, they focus on Los Chapitos, on the violence in Culiacan, on the political fallout, but quietly, systematically, and with the strategic patience of a man who has been building for 3 decades, Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores transformed from a regional boss into a national level power player. Let me walk you through exactly how this happened. In September of 2024, the Sinaloa cartel fractured in a way that shocked the criminal world. The arrest and extradition to the United States of Ismael El Mayo Zambada, who was himself allegedly kidnapped and handed to U.S. authorities by Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of El Chapo, created a civil war within the most powerful drug trafficking organization on earth. Los Chapitos, the sons of El Chapo Guzman, found themselves in open warfare against La Maiza, the faction loyal to El Mayo. That conflict, which analysts say has already killed nearly 2,000 people, tore apart the structure that had dominated Mexican drug trafficking for over 2 decades. And into that power vacuum stepped El Chapo Isidro. In May of 2025, Mesa Flores forged a formal public alliance with Ismael Zambada Sicarios, known as Mayito Flaco, son of El Mayo, combining the Guasave cartel's military wing with the logistical networks of the Mesa faction. The alliance was publicly announced through a statement released on social media by the criminal organizations themselves, which stated that the pact was formed because El Chapo's sons had betrayed the codes and trampled on their own allies. This was not a backroom deal. This was a public declaration of a new power block. To counter this move, Los Chapitos aligned themselves with their former rivals, the CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation cartel, led at the time by El Mencho. El Mencho's gunmen reportedly began flowing into Sinaloa to support the Guzman faction, and then El Mencho was killed in February of 2026. With CJNG now focused on its own internal leadership succession, the external support for Los Chapitos weakened significantly. By January 12, 2026, security analysts formally assessed that Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores had crossed the threshold. He had moved from being a regional operator to a national-level actor in Mexican organized crime. A man who spent decades deliberately under the radar was now, almost overnight, one of the 2 or 3 most powerful criminal figures in the entire country. Security sources tell journalists that his organization is now the main beneficiary of the entire cartel war, because while Los Chapitos and La Mesa bled each other dry fighting, Chapo Isidro was building alliances, expanding production, and consolidating his position in the Golden Triangle region, the agricultural heartland of Mexican drug cultivation. And critically, he has at least 15 open investigations against him in Mexico and a full federal indictment in the United States, and he remains free. To put into context just how different El Chapo Isidro is from the cartel bosses you know, consider this comparison. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was featured on the Forbes list of the world's most powerful people from 2009 to 2013. He gave an interview with Sean Penn, a Hollywood actor, while hiding from the Mexican military. His children posted photos on Instagram of his lifestyle. His wife was a public figure. His tunnel escapes became international news events. He was in many ways the most famous criminal in the world. He is currently serving life plus 30 years in ADX Florence, the United States' most secure supermax prison, and will die in a cell. Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores, meanwhile, has almost no photographs in circulation. His exact location is unknown to 2 governments. He has no known social media presence, no known public appearances, no tabloid coverage of his personal life. Despite being the leader of an organization that has reportedly killed thousands, moved millions of pills of fentanyl, and generated enough cash to bribe prosecutors, attorneys general, and federal judges, he is essentially invisible. And according to security analysts, that invisibility is itself a product of wealth. It costs enormous amounts of money to stay hidden at this level. Safe houses across multiple municipalities in multiple states, trusted networks of lookouts and community informants who alert him to law enforcement movements, lawyers capable of filing federal injunctions on his behalf, a team of associates who interface with the outside world so that he himself never has to appear anywhere that could be photographed, documented, or tracked. The intelligence community's assessment of why he has survived so long where others have not is revealing. One analyst noted that compared to the absolute top tier of Mexican cartel organizations, Mesa Flores has fewer resources. And yet, according to security sources speaking directly to journalists, his organization exports more drugs into the United States than any of them. That tells you everything you need to know about how efficiently this man operates. He is not the richest. He is not the flashiest, he is not the most well-known, but he may be the most effective drug exporter in the history of Mexican organized crime. And in 2026, with his rivals weakened or dead, he is expanding. But ironically, even a man who avoids fame cannot entirely escape it when the culture of the region he controls decides to celebrate him. Narco corridos, the traditional musical ballads of the Mexican drug trade, are a cultural institution in Sinaloa and throughout the narco corridor of northwestern Mexico. They are how the community processes, glorifies, mourns, and mythologizes its criminal figures. And El Chapo Isidro has corridos, multiple of them, written by some of the biggest names in the genre. These songs play at his narco posadas. They play in the towns and municipalities where his organization operates. They are part of the living mythology that surrounds him, a mythology that, unlike the mythology of El Chapo Guzman, is not built on Instagram posts or Hollywood interviews. It is built on the grassroots loyalty of communities that know who gave them their Christmas celebrations, who provides protection in places where the government never showed up, and who has maintained peace within its territory when other cartels were burning everything around them. After the violence connected to Beltran-Leyva-linked groups in certain regions was extinguished, the level of violence in Mesa Flores' territory actually decreased. His organization learned the lesson. They pulled back on the kind of high-visibility brutality that attracts federal attention and media coverage, and focused on maintaining territorial control with less noise. That is a decision that costs money too, because in cartel economics, the alternative to controlled violence is uncontrolled violence, and uncontrolled violence brings the full weight of government attention. Choosing restraint means choosing to leave some money on the table, some territory unclaimed, in exchange for operational longevity. It is the choice of a man thinking about decades, and that strategic patience is as much a part of his lifestyle as anything else. The only question left to answer right now is, how long can this actually last? Other criminal organizations are taking notice of what El Chapo Isidro has built, the model he has perfected: community integration, legal protection through corruption in the court system, military power without public profile, industrial-scale drug production with strategic export discipline is being studied and debated by intelligence analysts across two governments. According to the U.S. government's own reward posture, which has been in place since 2017 and was elevated again in February of 2025, when the FBI placed him on a 10 most wanted list, there is an active operational pipeline building against him. U.S. authorities have been applying pressure to his lieutenants, building informant networks, and constructing a case that has been in progress for years. He was originally indicted in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia on May 2, 2012. That indictment is over a decade old and has never resulted in his extradition or capture. The FBI's own assessment is that Mesa Flores has spent the last 20 years flooding the United States with deadly drugs as the head of the Mesa Flores cartel, and that in addition to fentanyl trafficking, his organization is accused of heinous crimes ranging from kidnapping and extortion to torture and murder. And yet, as of 2026, he remains free. In November of 2025, a violent federal operation in Guasave left 13 gunmen dead, 9 kidnapped people rescued, and an arsenal of long weapons seized. For hours, social media flooded with claims that El Chapo Isidro had finally been captured. By dawn, the government confirmed the scale of the firefight, but not the capture. He was not among those detained. That incident illustrates something important. His presence in Guasave is so embedded, so intertwined with every layer of the community and the regional power structure, that even operations that destroy his foot soldiers cannot reach him. He is not just hiding, he has built a protective architecture around himself that operates on multiple levels simultaneously: community, legal, political, military, and geographic. And here's something no one actually talks about. While the narrative around Mexican cartel bosses has always centered on the flashy, the famous, and the fallen, the most successful criminal in the hemisphere right now is a man most people outside of Mexico have never heard of. Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores started as a scrap metal dealer on the beaches of Guasave. He learned under the Lord of the Skies. He survived the cartel war against the most famous drug lord in history. He was arrested 4 times and walked out of jail 4 times. He got a federal judge to grant him a legal injunction. He built an industrial-scale fentanyl empire that now reportedly exports more drugs into the United States than anyone else. He organized Christmas parties for entire towns, while federal agencies offered $5 million for anyone who would give him up. And in 2026, as the cartel war reshuffled around him, he emerged not diminished but elevated, now a national level power player with alliances stretching across the most volatile criminal landscape Mexico has seen in decades. His billionaire lifestyle is not private jets and Instagram, it is something far more sophisticated than that. It is an invisible empire, invisible community investment, invisible legal protection, invisible political influence, invisible drug supply chains pumping product across an international border at scale. The luxury of El Chapo Isidro is not what he shows. It is what no one can find. El Chapo Isidro's gone underground, but we don't think his story is done being written. In fact, based on everything analysts and intelligence sources are saying right now, the most dangerous chapter may still be ahead, and the FBI with $5 million on the table cannot find him.